first and foremost, a lot of people would say, be curious, because there's so much disruption right now. I would rather say, be a learner, be curious, but more so have a learning mindset around what is happening around me and is something I can take advantage of in my work and is going to help elevate my work and my own working experience. I also think there's a tremendous amount of resiliency that HR has to have right now, and that's riding the wave of all of the disruption that we have had. And HR was very much relied upon to help our people understand this, have context, and in order to do that, you yourself have to be resilient.
Welcome to the Warriors at Work show. This is Jeannie Coomber, your guide and host. This is a show for men and women in the workplace who want to move from the predictable to the potent. This is your weekly dose of inspiration with an edge. I talk with CEOs and shamans, sports marketing executives and therapists. All of us are like-minded thinkers and doers who tell stories, share wisdom, and challenge each other to have the best life possible inside and outside the office. Welcome to your Warrior Conversation. Hey everybody, it's Jeannie. Thank you so much for joining me here at Warriors at Work. I am really excited to bring to you this week's conversation with Betty McCormack, who is the Managing Director in HR for Accenture. And this is an insightful, expansive, creative conversation about the reinvention of HR, the future of organizations, and Betty's personal talents and perspective on these subjects. But Betty also takes us on a journey through some personal trials and tribulations that she has managed through and overcome. So this experience that you're about to go through with me is also very, very inspirational. And I feel really lucky to have connected with Betty and to be able to provide her story, her ideas, and her approach to the future of human resources in my platform. Enjoy. Betty, thank you so much for joining me today in this conversation. I've been so looking forward to talking with you.
Likewise, so nice to see you. Thanks for having me.
So where I thought would be kind of fun to start is I'm going to read back some things about you. And then I'm going to take you into your current state. So you're the Managing Director of Human Resources at one of the most well-known global professional service organizations, Accenture. You have over 25 years of experience in HR, strategy, and talent development. When you graduated college and you started on this journey, is this what you saw for your career? Are you where you imagined?
I am not. Where I am is beyond the imagination I had when I was graduating school. And I didn't start here. Right after university, I went to a consulting company, and I was a business major. And probably like a lot of people, I thought, let me go get 1 or 2 years consulting experience. I'll figure things out, but that helps me write my ticket to something bigger. And I was placed onto an HR consulting assignment. And I started realizing I love the content of HR and not as much consulting. And I went to speak to my lead at the time, and they said, "You're crazy. Why would you want to go into HR and not do consulting?" And that was a very early signal to me of this is not the right environment for me. And I really don't ever want to be held back from pursuing what I think is right for me. So then I found Accenture, and it was so long ago, I found Accenture through a newspaper ad, help wanted section. And I thought, let me just get my foot in the door doing HR somewhere. And I started at the assistant level, entry level at Accenture, which was Anderson Consulting at the time. And we were a partnership at the time. We're now a public company, but there was part of our culture early on where partners would come and talk to big groups of employees and talk to you about why you would want to be ambitious enough to become a partner. And they would tell stories of driving through beautiful neighborhoods to the house that you could afford and the life you could have and the dreams. And I was completely sold on what they were talking about, just the ambition and the life I could create for myself. And along the way, I have had opportunities and work, as I said, beyond my imagination. And I'm sure we'll get into some other things, but now, many, many years later, I like to tell people I'm the story of what's possible.
Oh, I love that. The story of what's possible. Yeah, because I want to circle back to that because there's a couple of things about you that I think are really, really interesting. Where I first want to start is you call yourself a future-oriented HR business partner, and one of your passions in HR has been your vision and your active participation in the development of the next generation of leaders. You actually created an HR Talent Accelerator Program called TAP. And so what I want to do is I want to take a step back because I think it's really important for you to walk us through the genesis of this program and the early conversations, some of the critical moves that you were taking, because it's going to fit together with some of the other pieces that we're going to talk about.
Okay. So, one of my very early lessons at Accenture, well before we created TAP, was to be leading in the market. You have to be one step ahead of everyone else, knowing the ambition 5 to 10 years from now. So, feet planted in today, but always thinking about the future. And that is, to this day, what we tout as our special sauce at Accenture. And it was a little conditioned, always be thinking about the future, always be looking ahead. And about 10 years ago, we had a new chief leadership and HR officer take post. And as she was talking about her vision for HR and the future, she was talking about building the next generation of leaders. And she had the idea of let's create a 2-year rotational program where we find the best and the brightest and we apprentice them and almost have them get a mini MBA of sorts in HR leadership. And that was her idea. And then she gifted me with, Betty, this is the idea, bring it to life. And when she first gave me that gift, I thought, oh God, this is going to be hard. How are we going to find people? How are we going to structure this? And it was the best gift I could have received because I had at that point achieved making managing director at Accenture. So I had achieved my goal. And I had achieved my goal through the help of many, many other people who had invested in me. And I took the mindset of this is now the pivot of I have stood on the shoulders of many other people. And now I need to create the space for me to be the great steward and leave Accenture better off. And this chief leadership and HR officer, a legend in HR named Ellen Shook, gave us the license to figure it out and the proverbial build the plane as we were getting ready to fly it. And the lesson I've had along the way is, of course, how to find that talent and nurture them, but also to be making decisions with them. So it's never for them without it being with them. And it's a beautiful program. And I'm sure you don't want me to indulge my entire time on it, but it's a little piece of my heart at Accenture.
Well, I want to tease something out that you talked about, because what I think is really important is, when I think about all the people that are listening or watching, a lot of business leaders, we're often put in ambiguous or abstract situations with very little direction. Great idea, great concept, maybe even a vision of something, and it's put at your feet to actually execute, which you just gave that example. What I want to do is really look at what were some of the critical moves that you made early on. So you've been given this task, you realize I do have some skills and attributes to be able to do this, but what were some of the things that you had to deal with or make decisions around in order to get this launched?
So, first and foremost, you have to have a framework. So, the idea only comes to life by you being able to articulate, this is how we'll do it, a framework. And as we started out, we built the outline, as I like to say, but then we walked around to different and influential leaders at Accenture to get their input. And I think what's so important when you're given that ambiguous thing, you have to build it, you have to shape it, you have to execute it, is you should never do it alone. Of course, you should do your part to develop the content, but why not take advantage of the very, very smart people around you to give input? And by giving input, they're buying into what the
Right.
program is. And they became sponsors, people who hosted assignments for the people in the program. And the program is now 10 years old. And we have been really careful as we have gone through the last 10 years to say the frame is always the same. It's 2 years, it's a rotational program. The experience is going to change all the time, reflecting our market, what are our strategic priorities, who are the people who
Mm.
will spend the time to shepherd the experience and development of people in the program. And a lot of people love to have one time be a tradition. You know, it ran this way once, so it's just going to replicate over and over and over again. And to me, that's actually the kiss of death, because if I was running it with exactly the same experiences and exactly the same people as 10 years ago, it would be irrelevant. So it's a matter of build it, get the buy-in and get the input, and don't be so confident that you can't accept input as maybe we do need to iterate and change some
Mhm.
things or adjust. So the last part is always being agile. When we went through the pandemic, we had to change the entire makeup of things. We were all at home anymore. So you have to be agile to receiving input from everyone involved, what a program that you want everyone to love, not just you.
Mhm.
And you have to be agile to change with the context, the environment, and the people who are around it.
I'm curious, as you were building this, did you ever have doubts or concerns about it coming to fruition? And how'd you manage through that?
I didn't, because this was the idea of the chief leadership and HR officer at Accenture at the time. So, an extremely influential person who gifted to say, I want to do this. So, can you have it come to life? And I
Mhm.
thought, how amazing that I'm in the virtuous position of making someone's wish come true. Who's not going to love that?
Yeah, yeah.
So, and I allowed that to just be the confidence that I had as well. This person wants it, is going to sponsor, is going to pay attention to it, is going to help me if I need it, but has also given me the rope to be responsible and make it happen.
What has been some of your biggest surprises since the 10 years of this program being in existence?
My biggest surprise has been I spend very little time on the structure and the operation of the program, and I spend the vast majority of my time with every individual who steps through the program. And when I say that, that's deep care that we show to each person to show up as themselves, to understand their ambitions, to be shaping for them as they go through the program what they want their experience to look like, the credential that they want to grow. And that hyper personalization
Hmm.
is what makes it very special. Running it isn't hard. Making it relevant and meaningful and special for people is what I really spend my time on.
Oh, I love that. You know, what I want to do now is I want to take a broader step. Now let's go into the world of HR. You've
Okay.
been a part of many business cycles, world events, human resource centric experiences that really have impacted the world. What do you feel has been the most significant shift to the structure and or philosophies of HR in your tenure?
There have been two seismic shifts for us in HR. The first was the pandemic, and that was really significant for HR because we had to figure out how to do HR from our homes. But
Mm,
the first thing that everyone was worried about in the pandemic was people and their safety and their wellness and their ability to continue doing their work and helping, in the case of Accenture, us continue to be a profitable business. So HR was thrust very much into the center of the survival tactics, the pivot that we needed to make, and really caring for our people and keeping them engaged and interested and working during that time. And through the pandemic and the massive disruption that we're still seeing today is the second seismic shift, which is the impact of technology in
mm,
our work. And you may say, isn't human resources only about people? But actually, human resources is so much about people that if we can take advantage of all of the uh, digital data AI opportunity, we can have our HR professionals spending less time on administrative operational matters so that it opens up more capacity for us to really be doing the human touch, the highly elevated kind of work around development and experience and what people want and need from their employer rather than me, summarizing data or running,
mhm.
information through systems. So that's been an incredible unlock to move from, I would say, a bit more of maybe the back end view that people would perceive
Mhm.
of HR over the years to much more in the front line of we impact experience and productivity of our people.
And when you think about the attributes that remember when you started on Anderson Consulting and the attributes that got you that job and over the course of your 25 years, when you think about the attributes of an HR leader, what are the ones right now that you're seeing are just the most important attributes?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say first and foremost, a lot of people would say be curious because there's so much disruption right now. I would rather say be a learner. So I didn't know how to do a chat GPT prompt a year ago, but now I can do chat GPT prompts to summarize a 4-page document in less than a minute for me. And I used to spend an hour on that. And I'm
Mm,
using that as an example of be curious, but more so have a learning mindset around what is happening around me and is something I can take advantage of in my work and is going to help elevate my work and my own working experience. I also think there's a tremendous amount of resiliency that HR has to have right now. And that's riding the wave of all of the disruption that we have had. We can go back in time and talk about financial crisis, 9/11, really big events, but then we had a period over a long time, uh, over about 10 years, and we had two generations enter the workforce that never experienced a downturn. So when the pandemic
mm,
happened and a downturn happened, it was a huge shock to the system. And HR was very much relied upon of help our people understand this, have context. And in order to do that, you yourself have to be resilient. And
mm.
since that downturn, we're still totally disrupted. It's technology, which we've just talked about, all the social issues, political, what's going on in the world. It's like a poly crisis on
Right.
any given day. So HR has to be super resilient to work through that and help our people work through that.
And the other thing that you're touching upon as well, I mean, and this also goes back to the TAP program, you also have to embody a sense of curiosity about the future. How do I build myself, my attributes, and my capabilities so that I can influence the future state of HR so that it becomes less reactive, but much more of a visionary, much more of the strategic mindset, not necessarily being so focused on where we are today, but where are we trying to get to?
And even for your own preservation, it's how do I need to be reskilled? And that's a big buzzword right now, but maybe I had certain skills that served me really well over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And now it's a new set of skills that I have to be conversant or more in. So, again, that's that learner mindset of not to be too complacent and comfortable where you are, always be plugged into what are the skills that are going to keep me marketable, important, relevant, pick your word.
Yeah, and not be afraid to say, okay, that's what might have been the skills that were necessary for me 2, 3 years ago or pre-COVID. Here's the skills and attributes that I need to have now as I'm changing positions or I'm more involved with something that's going to impact the organization. I think it's just being honest and courageous in the evaluation of yourself because you're a lot of the examples that you're providing, it's HR's position from a strategic standpoint is absolutely crucial now in the reimagining the workplace and the organizations that we're trying to create. And I think it's really important to be self-reflective in that way. Do I have that right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm also kind of curious about something that I read about you. It was a beautiful tribute, and I'm gonna go a little personal here. You posted on your silver Accenture anniversary, and I would love for you to explore some of the things that you've shared. First, you talked very honestly about a near fatal brain tumor you had and how this has shaped you. So, what would you like to share there?
I very openly share this now, and it has been a journey for me, but I was a very healthy 28-year-old, and I thought I had an ear infection. So I went to the doctor, and the doctor said, "We're going to have you go get a hearing test." And it was all very mysterious. I wasn't getting a diagnosis of something. I thought I was going to get amoxicillin and be out of there 5 minutes later. And a couple of doctor's visits later, I was told I had a brain tumor the size of a golf ball. And if you think of the size of your brain, and then if you think about the size of a golf ball, that's a very disruptive thing to have in your brain. And I was told we need to have surgery to try and extract as much of this as possible, or it is fatal. And the size of the tumor and the reason that I was told we'll try to extract as much of this as possible is it had grown in a manner that I had a bunch of nerves wrapped around the tumor. And it was a very tricky and intricate surgery that needed to happen. So found the right doctor, had the surgery, and an outcome of that surgery for me was I lost my hearing on my left side, and I have some balance compromise, and I also have facial paralysis, which if you just meet me and I'm normally regulated, it's a non-apparent disability. You wouldn't know it by looking at me, but maybe as I talk and I'm getting more animated, you may notice I have almost Bell's palsy type of symptom. And there is something about meeting the word fatal that changes your perspective in life. Like,
Mm.
hey, what's your emergency? Because I can tell you about emergencies. But more so, I was different after that surgery than I was before. I had non apparent disabilities. I had things that I had to do differently in terms of taking care of myself, the environment that I worked in, even where I am in a room to be able to maximize what I can hear and see and experience. And it has now become a superpower of mine. And I will tell you why. Because I learned that in order to have things suit me, I had to be vulnerable and share my disability with people. So I walk into a room and maybe somebody's sitting in the perfect chair for me in the room. I will go up to them and explain, I have a non-apparent disability. This would be the perfect chair for me to sit in. Would you mind if I took this chair? 100% of the time, people
Mm.
are more than happy to move. In fact, they get really clumsy and they feel like they have to do it fast. But I have been met with so much kindness. And I also learned I have this responsibility as someone in the disabled community to share and have people be aware that maybe you look at me, I'm not in a wheelchair. I don't have an apparent disability. Maybe you don't look at me and know, but you are learning that there's something about me unseen, and everyone has this. It's the old adage, everyone has a struggle, so be kind. It reminds people to be kind, and it reminds people to react when someone shares something vulnerable about themselves. So I do it for myself to take care of number one. I also do it to be responsible for the community that I'm now a part of. And I do it so that others see me doing it and feel comfortable to share about themselves,
Mm.
because that sparks beautiful conversations between people.
That is a beautiful, beautiful story. And I think what you just said was so powerful. And talk about having powerful attributes as an HR leader and innovator. I think this power of vulnerability and sharing your heart, sharing your story gives other people permission to be so honest and vulnerable back. I think that is just so, so beautiful. The second thing that you acknowledge, well, one of the things that you acknowledge in your anniversary, I also want to talk about. You acknowledge leaders who mentored and guided you. You made reference to it just a moment ago. Can you share some insights on how those individuals had an impact on you? If there's any stories or examples that come to mind.
Tremendous impact on me. It has informed the way that I lead and show up every day, because I had more than one leader who did this for me. So, luckiest girl in the world to have multiple leaders who spent time with me and had what we would call a teachable point of view with me. So, rather than just answering my question, they would explain things. Sometimes they would even get involved in a debate of sorts. If I'm giving you the answer, but maybe you don't agree with the answer, I'm going to have that conversation with you and we'll tease it out. I think that young kids today call that riffing.
Mm.
Um, but I had people really invest and spend time with me. And I would, maybe I would have learned those things on my own, but that virtue of learning, talk, dialogue is so important, because you only learn by reading and also by doing to a certain degree. To have someone who is willing to talk to you about, like, what went really well on that, what didn't go really well on that, what should we do the next time, that's actually the richest learning, and that's feedback that you get. But it was always in a very safe space that I got that feedback from leaders. So that was most influential to me, and also gave me a lot of courage in letting people know what I expect of them. And that's relationships that I have up, and that's also relationships that I have down. Let's
Mm.
have conversations, tease things out, talk about the right way to do things, but also the best way to do things. And that's very nuanced and very subtle, but it's something that has served me well. And I have also delighted in learning that way.
Mm. Which speaks to the last point I'm going to make on what you shared on your anniversary. I love this. In your anniversary mention, you were talking about your career climb and you were guided by courage, and you were always asking, and for anybody listening that's needing a moment of inspiration, just take note of this. You said, "Why not me?"
Why not me? So it has not been the easiest climb for me. Just, oh, absolutely no disappointments. I've gotten here. I'm the story of what's possible, because the story of what's possible is it's not always perfect. And I have had multiple experiences of going after something in Accenture that was either a progression or a bigger role and not getting the job and getting rejected. And I mean, thankfully, I then still had the job that I had at the time. But my parents instilled in me when I was very young a certain amount of self assurance. And this is going to sound negative, which also, why not me, might sound negative. But it was the reminder that in life, the person who is going to look out for you the best is yourself, and have strength in yourself to, when you don't get what you want, ask why, because that is an opportunity for you to hear what else you need to do,
Mm-hmm.
what you can learn from it, and maybe even some of your blind spots that you're not aware of and or people don't want to tell you.
Mm.
So why not me was very much on, okay, maybe you've changed this to this for me in the moment, but how do I get back to that? And just share with me. And it's a little bit like, once I tell people the chair I need in the room, they kind of fuddle around and it's a little awkward. Once you ask somebody, why not me? They are accountable to tell you something. They
Yeah.
have to tell you something. And even if you don't like what you hear in the moment, you're getting something that's going to make you better tomorrow.
And it crystallizes the gap between where I am versus where I want to be. And
Yes.
I think that idea of when there's lack of clarity and you're left to your own devices, you create a lot of story. So I think it's really, really important to just pause and ask that question. I absolutely loved it. And I'm so glad that you brought up how you were brought up, because the question that I was curious, I'm like, where does that sense of courage and self-confidence come from? And it sounds like that was very much how you were brought up.
That was instilled in me as I was growing up, so thank you very much, mom and dad. And I also want to quickly tell you the story of one of my biggest disappointments at Accenture. Was we have a very big process around becoming managing director at Accenture because it's kind of a big deal. And I was put into the process for the first time, and I did not make MD. I was passed over for the promotion, and I was heartbroken, and I needed to kind of wipe off my wounds. But in the spirit of why not me, I asked for time with the person who made the decision.
Mm.
And I was put off for a while, but I was not willing to let that meeting be canceled. I was fine with it being moved 7 times before I finally had that meeting. And I went in and asked, why not me? And I got the answer of why not me. In fact, it was crystal clear what I did not need to be doing. But then that leader also expressed to me, there is something that I do want you to keep doing because it is different about you. And you are very courageous, and you will
Mm.
speak the truth, and you will do it in a productive way. And as much as I didn't like everything that preceded that comment in the conversation about why not me and the things I had to do, even though it was crystal clear, and thank you, um, it was awesome to get the validation of, in some respects, it is who I am, but I value that. I want you to keep doing that. And it is going to set you apart. And in my years since then, I do believe my courage is what sets me apart.
Mm. And what a thoughtful way to deliver it, so that you were very clear on what are the things I need you to keep doing. While you're working on the things that you need to get stronger at, we still want you to continue this. What
Yes.
a thoughtful way to deliver that. So The world of human resources is and talent development is constantly changing and evolving. You made mention of it numerous times about all the disruption. How do you stay attuned and relevant?
So you have to listen, watch, read the news and stay current. It's really important, even if your job supports, one location and a certain group of people. It's really important to understand what's going on in the world, especially right now. There are issues that may not be happening in our country, but run very deep for individuals and how they feel, how they are perceived, how they may even think they're marginalized. So, to best support people and be in HR, you have to know what's going on in the world. You have to be attuned to current events. And you have to be reading in whatever industry you work in, the periodicals around that industry. So what is happening? Where are investments being made? Where are companies deploying cash? Because it will tell you technologies or skills or certain types of people or product that they're looking for. So smart in the world, smart in your industry. And then we have such an interesting cross-generational workforce right now. I also think stay really current on pop culture and
Mm,
fun events, because it kind of is the way that we're all having fun in the world right now, because the other stuff is very, very heavy. So
yes.
being able to speak to what matters to Gen Z as much as the generations in the workforce for quite some time, or even bring them into the fold, is a lot of the fun of the job.
Which I am curious, who do you follow and why do you follow them?
Okay. I follow I'm gonna start with where I just ended. I love Andy Cohen, which probably depicts my gender and my age. I think I am like the archetype for who loves Andy Cohen and the Bravo TV channel.
Yes.
But I find him to just be charming and simple about pop culture and a lot of fun. Um, and he can be a little unconventional, which I like as well. I like to follow a lot of the typical inspirational people. And then I have a few podcasts that I listen to just to get my daily news. And I think this is very personal for people. I know a lot of people like things like The Daily, where it's like very consumable, quick. I like to listen to some news outlets like Wall Street Journal is a favorite of mine, where you get a little bit more of a global view, but it is a bit more
Mhm.
time to go through it all. So news, inspire, and pop culture.
And I would be remiss if I didn't highlight the fact you're also a mom of 3 children.
Yes.
What do you share with them about your career and your experiences as an executive at Accenture?
I take a lot of pride in showing my children how to work and provide and afford yourself a certain lifestyle and way of living. And I work very hard, and I have worked very hard to earn and achieve what I have. But especially my children now are 16 and 13. And of course, in the younger years, you're just trying to rear kind people who know how to learn and things like reading and cutting your own food. But we've graduated now where I think it's really important to talk to them about money and very real considerations in life. So we want to take a trip. A trip costs this amount of money. And in order to take this trip, these are trade offs we make in our life away from either savings or fun other things we would do. We talk very openly about what things cost
Mhm.
and the size of the wallet and the budget. And we also speak really practically, and my husband and I do this together. We speak really practically about how we make decisions and what's involved in that, because I want them, just like we all need in our work, I want them to have context around why we do the things that we do. And sometimes I'm having a lot of fun with my kids, and the context is we're just having a lot of fun. And then 30 seconds later, the context needs to change that I'm going to be a real deal parent to them. And I make sure they understand my message to you is I'm your parent and I'm your ride or die. And this is why I'm going to give you this lesson. So honesty is the best policy is one of our mottos, but so is transparency. And I want to teach them to be responsible adults who don't go out into the world and don't know how to take some decisions.
I think it's everything you said, totally agree. And the other thing that and I'm sure you do this as somebody who's so attuned in the human capital conversation is this importance of being honest and true to yourself and talking openly and honestly about our feelings and our assumptions and our opinions on things in a safe space. I think is just really, really important. And I love the financial management part because I think it'll serve them for the rest of their life, especially when they go off to college, if they know how all of that works. And I just think that's just really, really beautiful what you said. So here's my last question.
Okay.
Look out 12 to 18 months. What are you doing and how are you having an impact in the world, Betty?
This is a timely question because I have so many years at Accenture. I still have a lot of runway ahead of me, so I'm not done working. But at the beginning in particular of this conversation we were talking about, I've achieved more than I ever could have imagined. So as I think about my next horizon, 12, 18 more months, to me, it's really important for myself to be really excellent at whatever I do. I work hard on that. I want that to be my legacy. Wow, she was really good at whatever she did. And I wanted to be purposeful and meaningful. And for me, I've learned I love to build and grow things. I'm not really a person who likes to take things apart or deconstruct them and tear them down. So I hope 12 to 18 months from now, I am being excellent at building up. It may be people or an area of the business that I'm working in and setting it up to grow well beyond me.
Thank you so much for sharing your heart, your story. It's been an absolute pleasure having this conversation with you.
Thank you for fostering it with me. And I love that you're having these conversations. What a fun 40 minutes and best time of my week.
If you are interested in learning more about what we do at the Warriors at Work show and platform, be sure to go over to my website, Jeannie Coomber, and subscribe to my monthly Warrior Playbook newsletter. I share everything that I'm up to month by month, as well as some lessons and insights that I've learned. I'm also interested in hearing any feedback you have about this conversation or future topics. So reach out to me directly on jc@jeanniecoomber.com or on LinkedIn. Be sure to tell your friends and your colleagues about this Warriors at Work conversation. Subscribe, review, and rate us. It's the best way to get this message out into the world. Be well.